studio lights were just as bright as they had always been, but something about that morning felt unmistakably different. The familiar space, usually filled with quick wit and easy laughter, carried a quiet heaviness that couldn't be ignored. Ripa sat poised in her chair, her posture composed but her hands tightly interlaced, revealing an unspoken tension. Consuelos sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, his expression softer and more guarded than usual. There was no dramatic music, no rehearsed cue, just a shared stillness that signaled a moment of honesty. In a place built for entertainment, silence briefly took center stage, reminding everyone watching that even the most familiar faces carry unseen weight. When life interrupts the script for years, Kelly and Mark had represented something reassuringly constant. A long marriage built on humor, mutual respect, and visible affection. Their relationship felt like a story people could trust, one rooted in everyday commitment rather than fantasy. But life has a way of interrupting even the most carefully built routines. That morning was not about performance or polish. It was about acknowledging that some chapters arrive without warning. Kelly spoke slowly, not as a host guiding a segment, but as a person allowing herself to be seen. Mark listened closely, not as a public figure, but as a partner absorbing every word, aware that some moments don't need fixing, only presence. Choosing honesty in a public space. Speaking openly in front of millions is never easy, especially when the subject is personal and unresolved. Kelly's voice carried a quiet steadiness, shaped by intention rather than certainty. She didn't offer dramatic details or definitive answers, only the truth of how unexpected news can shift perspective and introduce questions that linger. Mark reached for her hand, grounding both of them in the present moment. The honesty they shared was not about spectacle. It was about acknowledging that vulnerability does not disappear simply because cameras are present. In that choice, they transformed a public platform into a space for connection rather than performance. Redefining what strength looks like. Mark has long been seen as confident and unshakable, someone whose energy suggests control and resilience. Yet he spoke candidly about learning that strength is not always loud or immediate. His instinct was to stay composed, to protect his family by holding himself together. But over time, he realized that allowing fear and emotion to surface privately did not weaken him. It clarified what mattered most. Kelly echoed this truth, emphasizing that strength is not about pretending everything is fine, but about showing up fully even when it isn't. Together, they reframed resilience as something built through honesty rather than denial. How fear quietly enters daily life. Uncertainty has a way of slipping into ordinary moments, changing how they feel without announcing itself. Kelly described how laughter sometimes carried an undercurrent of guilt, as though joy needed permission. Mark spoke of restless nights, not driven by physical discomfort, but by questions that had no immediate answers. Plans felt less fixed, time more precious. These were not dramatic shifts, but subtle ones, the kind that many people recognize but rarely articulate. By naming them, Kelly and Mark validated an experience shared by countless families navigating uncertainty behind closed doors. Partnership in its truest form. Throughout their conversation, what stood out most was how instinctively they leaned toward one another. Kelly rested her head briefly against Mark's shoulder, a small gesture that spoke volumes about trust and comfort. Mark responded not with words, but with stillness, offering reassurance simply by being there. They spoke about communication as an ongoing practice, listening carefully, checking in often, and allowing space for emotion without judgment. Their partnership was not presented as flawless, but as intentional, built on choosing each other repeatedly, especially when answers are unclear. Parenting with care and honesty. One of the most meaningful parts of their reflections centered on their children. Kelly and Mark spoke thoughtfully about how they approach difficult conversations, balancing honesty with reassurance. They emphasized the importance of tone, timing, and presence, recognizing that children often absorb emotional cues more than words. Mark reflected on how fatherhood reframed everything, making patience and attentiveness feel urgent and sacred. Their approach wasn't about having all the right answers, but about creating an environment where questions and feelings were welcome, reinforcing trust and emotional safety. When fame offers no protection, Kelly was clear in acknowledging that visibility and success offer no shield from life's challenges. In moments of uncertainty, Kelly was clear in acknowledging that visibility and success offer no shield from life's challenges. In moments of uncertainty, professional achievements fade into the background, replaced by the immediate reality of being human. Mark echoed this sentiment, noting that away from the audience, there is no script, no applause, only the quiet responsibility of showing up for the people you love. This acknowledgement resonated deeply, reminding viewers that hardship does not discriminate, and that shared humanity is often revealed most clearly when status is stripped away. Allowing support to exist. Another powerful theme was the couple's openness to receiving help. Kelly spoke about the importance of talking to trusted friends and professionals, emphasizing that asking for support is not a failure but a necessity. Mark shared that giving himself permission to speak honestly, to release emotion rather than contain it, helped him stay present rather than overwhelmed. Their message was clear. Resilience is not a solitary achievement. It grows through connection, conversation, and the willingness to admit when strength feels borrowed rather than innate. A response that reflected shared humanity. The response from viewers was immediate and heartfelt. Messages poured in from people who saw their own experiences reflected in Kelly and Mark's words. Many expressed gratitude not for answers, but for recognition, for the simple acknowledgement that fear, love, and uncertainty often coexist. Kelly and Mark spoke later about reading these messages together, moved by how openness can ripple outward, creating connection between strangers. In sharing their truth, they didn't position themselves as examples to be admired, but as people walking alongside others facing similar emotional terrain. Love without guarantees. As the segment drew to a close, there was no tidy resolution, no promise that everything would be easy or predictable. Instead, Kelly offered a quiet affirmation of togetherness, a commitment rooted not in certainty, but in choice. Mark returned her sentiment with a gentle smile, his eyes reflecting both emotion and resolve. Their exchange underscored a simple truth. Love is not proven by perfect outcomes, but by presence when outcomes remain unknown. It was a reminder that devotion often reveals itself most clearly in unresolved moments. Strength that comes from presence. What lingered most was the way they remained present with one another. Small actions, a hand held, a glance shared, carried more meaning than any speech. These gestures illustrated that strength is not always about endurance, but about attentiveness. Facing difficulty together does not eliminate fear, but it transforms it into something more manageable. By staying engaged rather than retreating, Kelly and Mark demonstrated how connection can soften uncertainty and create space for hope. Lessons that extend beyond one story. Their conversation was not about a single moment or circumstance, but about a way of moving through life. They showed that resilience includes pauses, tears, and moments of doubt. That courage can be quiet. That vulnerability, when shared, creates understanding rather than discomfort. These lessons extended far beyond their own lives, offering viewers permission to feel deeply, speak honestly, and lean on others without shame. Moving forward, one day at a time. As the studio returned to its familiar rhythm, the impact of the moment remained. Kelly and Mark did not move forward with certainty, but with intention. Each day became an opportunity to choose presence, to prioritize connection, and to honor the emotions that arise along the way. Their story was not about overcoming something quickly, but about living fully within uncertainty, finding meaning not in answers, but in commitment, a quiet source of hope. Ultimately, what Kelly and Mark shared was not fear, but hope grounded in realism. They reminded viewers that life's unpredictability does not cancel joy or love, it deepens them. By embracing honesty and compassion, they offered a powerful example of how people can face difficult seasons without losing themselves or one another. Their story resonated because it reflected something universal, that even when the future feels unclear, presence, love, and authenticity remain steady sources of strength. A shared human experience. This moment mattered because it stripped away performance and revealed humanity. Kelly and Mark did not present themselves as heroes or survivors, but as partners navigating uncertainty together. In doing so, they reminded viewers that vulnerability is not a weakness to overcome, but a bridge that connects us. Their openness affirmed that fear does not have to be faced alone, and that sometimes simply staying present with one another is the most powerful act of courage there is.